Good news if you're a home owner, but it's obviously a major issue for affordability.
The federal government is expected to announce a sweeping overhaul of the Department of Defence in a bid to cut costs and boost productivity. Here's Laura Lavelle. The changes will mark the...
Use the left lane to take the Western Motorway slip road.
...struggles to tackle cost blowouts and delays in the delivery of projects.
Continue for 1 kilometre.
Three groups within Defence will be rolled into one, and a new agency designed to have oversight of capability and budgets will be announced. It's not yet clear if any senior Defence Department officials or top brass will be axed in the restructure. It comes amid an increase in spending on Australia's Defence Force and pressure from the Trump administration to boost expenditure and capability.
In 500 metres, merge onto M4.
New South Wales government is too frightened of the gaming lobby to bring in major industry reform. From April next year, every pub and club in the state will have to shut down their poker machines between 4 a.m. and 10 a.m. to give problem gamblers the chance to get out of the zone. Reverend Costello says it's a very modest measure that fails to address the real problem in a state home to 35% of the world's poker machines.
The reform that's needed is a cashless mandatory card recommended by 2 productivity commissions in the game.
Continue on M4 for 5 kilometres.
Protected by paying their losses before they start gambling. This is a very small.
Overseas, the death toll from devastating floods and landslides across Asia has risen to around 900. More than 440 deaths have been reported in Indonesia, while in Sri Lanka, around 200 people have been killed. Sri Lankan President Anura Kumara Dissanayake says his country is facing the most challenging natural disaster in its history.
With the nation affected from end to end, this is a highly challenging task that needs to be conquered. While our small island could be shaken by this merciless natural disaster, the humanity and resilience of our people cannot in any way be shaken, and this has been reaffirmed again.
And the federal government is urging tech companies to block AI-generated content amid rising concern over deepfakes. You're up to date with the latest from ABC. Thank you very much, Sarah. Sarah Morris with you now. We continue from Getting on That. You're listening to ABC News Radio. Hello, thanks for your company right across the country. It is Monday the 1st of December.
In 3 kilometres, take the exit towards Cumberland Highway, Jersey Road.
Closure. Country's largest coal-fired power station. Does that next? Also, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio says there's more work to be done after hosting peace talks in Ukraine to push back the Russians.
Now it gets complicated. There are a lot of moving parts, and obviously there's an authority involved here that will have to be a part of the equation.
We'll get you some analysis on that. Also, there's a swimmer that's missing off the New South Wales Midland coast, so we'll get an update on that search. In terms of weather today, showers forecast for Melbourne, Hobart, Canberra, showers and a storm on the radar for the moment. Well, let's start talking about energy. Australia's energy market operator, known as AEMO, fears that the electricity grid around the country is not prepared for the closure of the largest coal-fired power station in Australia, and it's warning that Eastern Australia faces a heightened risk of blackouts as a result. Now, the Bonnyrigg power station in the New South Wales Hunter region north of Sydney is slated to close in 2027, but AEMO is now saying this might have to be extended. Well, let's get some more on this now with Tony Wood, who is the Energy and Climate Change Senior Fellow at the Australian Institute. Tony, hello.
Good afternoon, Sarah.
So can you explain to us why it is we might end up with blackouts when the Bonnyrigg power station is retired?
Well, look, we'd like to think that we won't, but let's look at true. So, what the many people, if you've ever done high school physics, something like that, you'd be aware of things called volts and amps and those sort of things, right, about your electricity system. And
In 600 metres, take the exit towards Cumberland Highway, Jersey Road.
So most of the time we're worried about having enough electricity, but making sure that electricity system is stable, that the voltage stays around 240 volts, for example, is really important. And the way that's done is that these big spinning turbines, which are
Take the exit towards Cumberland Highway.
Gas-fired power stations or the nuclear power stations, they provide the system stability because they're big and they're spinning.
In 500 metres, use the left 2 lanes to turn left onto Cumberland Highway, Jersey Road.
They have to be replaced with something else. And there are other technologies around that can do it, and they've been doing that now for the last 7 or 8 years since we started to become aware of this problem. But we haven't been doing
Use the left 2 lanes to turn left onto Cumberland Highway, Jersey Road.
As you mentioned, the Rosehill in New South Wales is the next one scheduled to close. And what was supposed to have happened before then is that what they call synchronous condensers, the word itself is messy, doesn't mean very much, but what they are is effectively something that does the same job as these spinning turbines without producing electricity. They just provide stability in the grid. And so, but the problem is that they're not currently scheduled to...
Continue on A28 for 6 kilometres.
Now, there are other things that could be done. Like there are other, you can get snowy hydro or a gas-fired generator to run more frequently. That would cost money. And obviously, if none of those things could be done, then you might consider whether or not you could keep a Rosehill running for another year, for example, until these synchronous condensers that are supposed to have been put in place by the transmission company in New South Wales, namely a company called Transgrid, until they arrive. That's where we are. I don't think it's yet clear that extending a Rosehill is necessary, but in this report today, obviously our EMO is identifying the concerns that raise that prospect.
Okay, so this is interesting. It's not that when we turn off this coal-fired power station we won't have enough electricity coming from elsewhere. It's simply that the infrastructure won't be in place to smooth out the system and guarantee our electricity supply. I'm interested in why this infrastructure is not going to be ready in time, because there have been years to sort this out, including an extension of Rose's eventual close down. Why are we behind?
Well, as far as I can see at the moment, someone hasn't doing their job properly. And in the case of, the similar thing happened in New South Wales when they had a statewide blackout. This just tells you how far back we've known these sort of problems can exist. And in what they did in South Australia when the last coal-fired power station shut down, they kept the gas generators running longer so they could be used not just to provide electricity, but also, if necessary, to provide this stability arrangement that we're talking about. Now, eventually, AEMO, operating with the South Australian Transmission Company, got synchronous condensers put in place, and now that's the way that operates. You can do the same thing with big batteries, for example, as well. Now, in the case of New South Wales, AEMO can, if they have to, intervene in the market and tell people what they've got to do. But if there's no people there to do something, you can't tell anybody. So that's where the situation is. So my understanding is that these condensers, synchronous condensers, were supposed to have been put in place by Transgrid for whatever reason, I don't know. They haven't. And if we therefore end up in a situation where whatever we do, and I'm just assuming for a minute that a Rosehill could be kept running for another year. Now, obviously, you don't do that lightly because there would be significant costs associated with getting a huge facility that was scheduled to close in 2 years' time, or maybe less than that, in 2027, to over another year. There'd be significant costs, just keeping all the employees still working there, for example, for another year. So you can imagine you wouldn't do that lightly. So my suspicion is that what reports like this do, Sarah, is to really focus attention both from the government and from the market operators as to what has to be done, because who's responsible for this? And at the moment it seems to me some people have been sitting around not wanting to engage with the problem because maybe they didn't even understand what a synchronous condenser actually is anyway. So it's a messy problem, but it is a worry, yeah.
So this is the proverbial rocket up the bum, is it, to try and get them going before a Rosehill does come offline?
That's an image that I'd rather not get close to, if you don't mind.
Fair enough.
But in some ways, it is the responsibility. We call them the market operator, but their job is to operate what we've got. And if they think we're not going to have enough of what we need, they point that out. It is not their job to build the things we need, and that's where I think it sits on government, it sits on those who are in the chair, such as in this case, the transmission company, to explain why haven't they delivered the synchronous on time, and why should consumers pay if they fail to do their job. But I'm not saying this. I'm not laying blame right now because I don't know enough. But I think there's some very important questions to be answered before we start, extending the life of a railway and paying a lot of money for it.
And you mentioned a good point there. Why should consumers pay? If it does turn out to be someone's fault, should they have to then maybe pay for the extension of a raring or compensate poor old electricity users? Or does anyone take ownership of this, put their hand up and deal with the consequences?
Well, I think that is the number one question that arises for me, because
In 3 kilometres, take the Paulding Street exit towards Fairfield, Bonnyrigg.
223, we had some big problems in New South Wales. It was so bad we couldn't even get coal to the coal-fired power stations because coal mines were flooded, and so forth, right? And in that case, the costs of what had to be done to make sure electricity stayed reliable and online were significant. Those costs were passed through to consumers. It was those costs that are mostly responsible for the big price increases that people have been complaining about ever since. So in that case, you could say, well, an act of God. I'm not going to ask God what she was thinking of at the time. But I mean, it clearly was not something you could actually lay blame to anybody. But we do know that the whole system is changing and there are responsibilities here. And so I think there's no good reason why we should be saying, well, if Transgrid or anybody else has not done what they were supposed to have done, then surely those costs cannot just simply be passed through to consumers.
They have to be carried by whoever was at fault. Tony, always great to get a clear explanation from you. We understand fully what's going on now. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Tony Wood there, the Energy and Climate Change Senior Fellow at the Grattan Institute. Now, a huge multi-agency search is underway on the mid-north coast of New South Wales after an 18-year-old went missing off a remote beach. Marina Trakovic is at Southwest Rocks where that search is unfolding for us.
Police have confirmed to us that they're searching for that 18-year-old out on the water and in the skies today. We know that he is a school leaver from Sydney, a boarder at King's College. He was travelling to Southwest Rocks with a group of friends celebrating schoolies when he went for a late afternoon dip yesterday afternoon. Now, he went for a swim at Little Bay Beach, which is just around the corner behind me, when he got trapped in a rip. His friends are trying to go after him to pull him to shore. Now, this is a major multi-agency search. We've got Marine Rescue out there, Police Marine Area Command, lifeguards on jet skis and in boats searching for this swimmer. The search got called off late yesterday night when it got too dark, so they were back out there at 8 a.m. this morning. Major efforts to find him. You've got Marine Area Command back there as well, and they're really looking hard. This is the third incident on our beaches in the last week or so. On Friday afternoon at Crescent Head, a 59-year-old man lost his life. He also got stuck in a rip on one of these remote beaches. Now, he was pulled to shore by bystanders, and 2 off-duty lifeguards also celebrating schoolies were able to administer CPR, but sadly he could not be saved. There was also obviously the incident on Thursday night with our Swiss tourists who were attacked by that shark. So, warning from
In 400 metres, take the Paulding Street exit towards Fairfield, Bonnyrigg.
Marina Trakovic with that story there for us. We'll keep an eye on that search and we'll bring you any details or updates as we get them.
Take the Paulding Street exit, then use the right lane to take the slip road.
The Commissioner is warning that smart cars are being weaponised in domestic and family violence cases. Perpetrators are using the technology to track, intimidate and control their victims. Former Nationals member Barnaby Joyce says he will make his decision on whether or not he'll defect to One Nation in the next few weeks.
Use the right lane to take the slip road.
Considering going to the other party. And the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has formally requested a presidential pardon in his long-running corruption trial. Mr. Netanyahu has been on trial
in 100 metres, at the roundabout, take the second exit onto Smithfield Road.
Trust, all of which he denies. Let's get you an update now on the state of the Ukrainian peace talks. More talks have been happening in the
Exit
US
the
overnight.
roundabout
US
onto Smithfield
Secretary
Road.
Marco Rubio hosting Ukrainian officials in Miami. Both of them, all the parties, trying to progress a peace deal to end
Continue
Russia's war
on
in
Smithfield
Ukraine.
Road for 5 kilometers.
Meetings in recent weeks with Ukraine's European allies fearing that the White House was going to force Kyiv into a deal that heavily favoured Moscow. Our Europe correspondent Catherine Diss has been keeping an eye on developments.
This is just the latest in a series of talks held between Ukraine and the US, and also the US and Moscow. Washington and Kyiv are desperately trying to find a path forward to ending the war with Russia. But the White House was heavily criticised last week for rushing the process at any cost when that 28-point peace plan was leaked and indicated like it heavily favoured Moscow, so much so that many believe that it was simply a Russian or Kremlin wish list translated into English. These talks began with a promising tone. Marco Rubio started the press spray by saying that this is not just about achieving peace and stopping the killing, but it's also about ensuring a path towards Ukraine remaining a sovereign, independent and prosperous nation. The language was interesting. It differs somewhat from what the US President Donald Trump has used of late. He almost seems as though he's frustrated and become impatient with just how long this process is taking. So perhaps today's language is deliberate, given the heavy criticism aimed at the administration last week.
The end goal is obviously not just the end of the war. Obviously, that's essential and fundamental. We want to see the end of the killing and the death and the suffering, and I'm sure the Ukrainian side, I know they do as well. They want peace, but it's also about securing an end to the war that leaves Ukraine sovereign and independent and with an opportunity at real prosperity. So this is not just about ending a war. This is about ending a war in a way that creates a mechanism and a way forward.
We are discussing about the future of Ukraine, about the security of Ukraine, about no repetition of aggression of Ukraine, about prosperity of Ukraine, about how to rebuild Ukraine. And we're thankful for the efforts of United States and its team to helping us. US is hearing us, US is supporting us, US is walking beside us, and we're thankful for all what has been done until today, and we're looking forward to have a successful, productive meeting today.
So that was Rustem Umerov, Ukraine Security Council Secretary there. He's leading this delegation from Ukraine, this time after the shock resignation of Andrei Yermak on Friday, who was the longtime Chief of Staff to Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky. He resigned from the position after his apartment was searched by anti-corruption investigators on Friday. Now, while we don't know exactly why they were searching his property, and he says that he is continuing to comply with authorities and has denied any sort of wrongdoing, we do know that it comes in the wake of a major corruption scandal there, where several top government officials and public figures have been accused of siphoning off some $150 million from a state-owned energy company. And this has, of course, outraged the public because they live day by day with rolling blackouts because of those Russian airstrikes. As to the peace talks and where to from here, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and also Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law, are expected to travel to Moscow this week, where they'll meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin, where they're hoping that he might come to the table. But after hearing him speak last week and some of the rhetoric that President Putin was using, it's difficult to see where he will compromise his demands and what he wants to achieve from this war don't appear to have changed one little bit.
That's our Europe correspondent Catherine Diss. Now, staying overseas, nearly 12 million people have been driven from their homes during Sudan's continuing civil war between government forces and the rebel RSF. Now, when the final army stronghold in the west of the country, El Fasher, fell to the rebels at the end of last month after a 500-day siege, there were reports of widespread brutality against civilians. The BBC's Barbara Plett-Usher is one of the first international journalists to speak directly to some of those who managed to escape. She's travelled to a camp near the town of Al-Dabar in northern Sudan. Journalists aren't permitted to move around freely, so she and her team were in army-controlled territory and accompanied at all times. Just a warning, some listeners may find the details in this report disturbing.
Waking up to another morning free from fear. The desert has become a refuge. People who escaped El Fasher traveled hundreds of miles to get here. A camp set up in army-held territory. The newest arrivals wait to be screened, including for any possible connections with the RSF. They've come mostly empty-handed, but burdened with stories of loss and violence. Abdullah's wife was killed in shelling 4 months ago. He fled El Fasher with his 3 young daughters on the day the city fell, but nearly lost them too. He was beaten by RSF fighters in the chaos as people ran in panic, then separated from the girls at a checkpoint.
The RSF told the old men and women to stand apart from the young men, so I gave my daughters to the women. Then the RSF brought big vehicles, and we were scared they were going to forcibly recruit us. So some of us ran and escaped into the neighborhood. All night I was thinking, how am I going to find my children again? I've lost so many people already. I was afraid I'd lose them too.
When El Fasher finally fell, people fled in different directions. This is one of the few places in the country where they built a camp especially to house them. But aid agencies believe many didn't get very far because of danger or detention or the cost of buying their way out. And those who did make it to safety are broken. Families were scattered and scarred by the long siege of the city and the violence of its capture.
There are mostly women here, and many don't want to be identified to protect those who stayed behind. This mother wasn't in El Fasher when it fell. Her children managed to escape from the city, but the eldest daughter was terrified she'd be raped. The RSF took a girl out of the car at a checkpoint, she says, and we had to leave her behind.
In 400 meters, turn left onto Elizabeth Drive.
They were traveling with their grandmother, but she died before they reached their first stop. At first I thought my grandmother passed out from lack of food or water, she says. But I found a doctor and he said, your grandmother has given you her soul.
Heartbreaking, isn't it? That was the BBC's Barbara Plett-Usher with that story. It's time now for some sport. Fraser Fyfe's with us today, and Fraser, some well-deserved recognition for one of Australia's best field athletes.
Yeah, indeed, Sarah. Australian high jumper Nicola Olashagers has been named World Athletics Field Athlete of the Year. The Olympic silver medalist captured both the indoor and outdoor titles in 2025, reset the Oceania record to 2.04 metres and claimed the Diamond League crown. Swedish pole vaulter Armand Duplantis was crowned World Athlete of the Year for a third time, and legendary broadcaster Bruce McAvaney has
Turn left onto Elizabeth Drive
at the ceremony in Monaco. Well, Australia's Oscar Piastri has taken a swipe at his McLaren team after finishing second at the Qatar Formula One Grand Prix. Piastri started from pole, but a pole call
in 400 metres, turn left onto Bonnyrigg Avenue.
With world champion Max Verstappen going on to win the race, the Australian is within 16 points of his McLaren teammate and championship leader Lando.
Turn left onto Bonnyrigg Avenue, then your destination will be on the left.
And he can still win the title, but Piastri couldn't hide his disappointment with his team strategy.
You know, it's not all bad, obviously. It's been a really good weekend. The pace has been very strong, but yeah, obviously a little bit tough to swallow at the moment.
Meanwhile, Chaz Mostert has claimed a maiden the last race in the grand final in Adelaide. Mostert finished second to Matt Payne, but did enough to make up a 23-point championship deficit to Brock Feeney, who finished 20th after spinning out.
Your destination is on the left.
Mostert says the triumph is a dream come true.
I'm pretty out of breath and my brain's completely scattered. It feels like exactly when you win Bathurst, you just feel so numb in excitement because you just can't fathom it. Like, you know, you dream of this when you're a kid, you're 6, 7 in go-karts.
The Supercars Grand Final will stay in South Australia for the next 9 years, with a contract extension signed between the series organisers and the SA government. More than 285,000 fans packed out the Adelaide Street Circuit across the 4-day event, including a record crowd of just over 102,000 yesterday. Supercars